USAA knows dynamic duos can save the day, like superheroes and sidekicks or auto and home insurance. With USAA, you can bundle your auto and home and save up to 10%. Learn more and get a quote at USAA.com/bundle. Restrictions apply.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
Hello and welcome to the Plant School Podcast. I'm Rachel Tenney, and here we learn all about plants, how they work, how to care for them, and it's all taught in a way that anyone from beginner to expert can listen to, understand, and enjoy. So I hope that you will join me in Plant School. Hello and welcome to the Plant School Podcast. I hope that you came today ready to learn about the most dangerous houseplants, because that is what we are going to be talking about today. This one is going to be very educational. If you thought I was just going to ramble off a list of houseplants, you're wrong. I am diving in deep on why plants are even toxic in the first place and what is going on kind of on a chemical and cellular level in these houseplants to have the effects it does on our bodies or on other animals. It's all very interesting. Before I get into all of that good stuff, let's quickly do our giveaway winners. Every episode, I choose 2 giveaway winners, one from Apple Podcasts from someone who has left a review on there, and then I take another giveaway winner from someone on Spotify who has commented on the most recent episode. So starting with Apple Podcasts, the person who is won today, their username is Emma, and in parentheses they put plant lover, and she said, "I love your podcast. I love listening to it to help me take care of all my plants. I did not know how to take care of most of my plants before I discovered your podcast. I just started getting into plants and I have learned so much from you. You explain things in such a great way. Thank you so much for all that you do. I was also wondering if you could do an episode on fungus flies in houseplants and how to get rid of them. I have been struggling with them and I would love some guidance. Thank you so much." It has been so long since I have done an episode on pests and houseplants. I'm just now realizing that. In fact, it might be one of the first 50 episodes that I ended up archiving because my podcast, if you've been listening for a while, you know that my podcast started out as something very different. My husband was on it with me. I hardly did any editing, and just because it has changed so much, I ended up archiving those first 50 episodes because I had a lot of people coming, listening to the first few, and being very disappointed and leaving. But since the production has changed so much, I was like, you know what? I think I should just archive those. So anyways, that's besides the point. I was just saying, I don't think I've covered pests. So thank you so much, Emma, for bringing that up. I am going to make a note of that right now, and hopefully I can get to that soon. So sorry that you've been dealing with fungus gnats. I realize you left this review a while ago, so hopefully you aren't still dealing with them. But if you are, I will cover it so that we can get those gone for you. And thank you so much for leaving that review. Go ahead and email me at tennyplants@gmail.com. That's TENNEY plants@gmail.com so that I can get your address and we'll get your giveaway package sent your way. And I haven't even mentioned what that is. So for any of you that are new and listening, what you win as a giveaway winner is a bottle of Prop Drops. I love this product. It's basically a water propagation aid for your houseplants. So when you snip off a cutting and you are propagating it or growing it in water, you can also drop in some Prop Drops, and it helps roots come in so nicely, and I feel like a lot faster too. I use it religiously with every water propagation that I have now, and I feel like they just do so much better. They don't rot on me quite as much anymore. All right, let's go ahead and move to our second giveaway winner. This is someone who has left a comment on Spotify. And I just have like a random number generator choose the winner for me. And so today's winner, I had asked you guys if you had any fruit trees currently or maybe growing up, because we were talking about fruit trees in the last episode. And our winner today is Courtney Hutchins 237. She said, "We had apple trees when I was a kid, but for some reason they never produced. A tornado took them out when I was in the 8th grade. I would love to have peach trees though. For now, I'll stick to houseplants until I get the hang of those." I love that. That's a great plan. Courtney, thank you so much for commenting, being a part of the Plant School community. Go ahead and email me at tinnyplants@gmail.com and I will get your address and send those prop drops on their way. If you guys want to check out prop drops, go to marketbotany.com. You can even use the code Plant School Podcast for a discount on your order. And for this episode, for those listening on Spotify, maybe you want to enter into the next episode's giveaway, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Go ahead and comment an episode that you would love to hear more about, whether that's you want me to cover one of your houseplants that I haven't covered yet, or maybe you have a question that you want to deep dive into in the green world. It doesn't have to be in houseplants. I'm trying to get more into gardening as well. So either one, if you have a question or a specific houseplant, let me know in the comments for those of you on Spotify, and that will automatically enter you into the giveaway. And I always mention this, but if you would like to comment something else, you can just comment an emoji or whatever. That also enters you into the giveaway. I am not picky on what you comment and will not disqualify you based on what you comment, of course. And then for those listening on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, and that will automatically enter you in as well to hopefully win yourself a bottle of prop drops from Market Botany. All right, let's get into this episode. So I am someone that loves to ask the question, why? I feel like that's why I have always really been drawn to science, because it often answers that question of why. So for this episode, before I dive in to exactly what the most dangerous houseplants are, I want to answer the question of why are houseplants dangerous, or why are they toxic? Because what I'm talking about today is, if you eat a houseplant, why will it negatively affect you? What is the purpose of that? So houseplants, and obviously just plants in general, this is not specific to just houseplants, they produce toxic compounds or chemicals as mainly a form of self-defense. And many of our houseplants, they evolved in tropical ecosystems where there is a diverse group of predators. There's a ton of competition. So you need strong defenses to make it in those tropical ecosystems. So while these plants are beautiful in our homes, their defenses are still active, even though we are not the animals that were originally, trying to eat them and that they were trying to repel. Their chemical defenses are still there. And these have evolved over millions of years, primarily as survival strategies. And here are the primary reasons why these chemical defenses developed. So number one was to deter herbivores. Those animals that are eating up all the plants obviously cannot run away from herbivores, so they use chemical warfare instead. Many of them do, not all of them. So there are toxins like calcium oxalate crystals, alkaloids, glycosides, and saponins that make the plant unpleasant or dangerous to eat. And if all of that sounded like a word, fruit salad, don't worry, we're actually going to be talking about a lot of these, and I will break down exactly what each one is and how they affect us, because a lot of houseplants do contain these. So herbivores, they may consume these houseplants, they become sick or they die, and they learn or they evolve to avoid that plant in the future, therefore keeping that plant alive. So it has an evolutionary advantage. So plants that were more toxic were less likely to be eaten, they were more likely to survive and then reproduce, pass on those traits. So over time you get plants that develop these toxic traits and keep them going. Hopefully that whole concept of passing on those toxic traits doesn't remind you of your family or anything like that. As I was saying that, I was like, does this apply to humans? Anyways, let's move on. The second reason this survival strategy came about was to defend against microbes and fungi, so some of the much smaller guys aiming to attack plants. So a lot of these toxins in the plants have antibacterial and antifungal properties. These help the plant from having infections, especially when they are in those really humid, competitive environments like rainforests, where, like I said, a lot of these houseplants originate, and there is a high risk for microbes getting into them if a leaf is wounded or a branch is snapped. Those toxins give the plant better resistance to disease, and that means a longer lifespan. It means more reproductive success, and that's another reason why they have developed this chemical warfare technique. Another reason, number 3, is to compete with other plants. So certain plant toxins are allelopathic, meaning that they can suppress the growth of nearby plants. So this will reduce competition for light, for water, and nutrients, and allows that plant to have better access to those things and survive and also reproduce. And then the last reason number 4, why plants have evolved to have chemical warfare techniques is to target insects. Insect pressure is very high in those tropical climates. So some of these compounds specifically target insects. They repel them or they can kill them. Things like alkaloids or your terpenes. And less insect damage means healthier foliage and a better chance to survive and reproduce. All right, so let's get into it. We're going to start with probably the most common toxic chemical found within houseplants. I had a list of 20, 30 houseplants, but quickly realized that about half of them was just this one chemical. They all had this in common. So I'm grouping them all together. So again, I don't bore you with a really long list with saying the exact same thing. But our example plant that we will start with, and I'll tell you all the other ones that are similar and have this same chemical compound, we're going to start with Dieffenbachia, or your dumb cane plant. And Dieffenbachia, it contains calcium oxalate. So what is calcium oxalate? What does that even mean? It is a chemical compound made up of calcium, and oxalate ions, and that might not mean much to you. But let me tell you this, because this is kind of jarring, kind of scary. I even looked up pictures of it, and it did not look fun because calcium oxalate, the way it forms sharp microscopic crystals, often called rhaphides. They are needle-shaped. They are responsible for the painful effects. And so the pain when you eat a Dieffenbachia, if you were to, I'm not promoting this here, but just in our example, is not from the chemical compound itself, like a chemical causing damage. It is from the crystals piercing the soft tissue of your lips, of your tongue, of your throat, of your esophagus. Should I keep going? It's just awful. They're essentially like tiny shards of glass in your mouth. So as you can imagine, anytime a plant with calcium oxalate is ingested, it will cause irritation of your mucous membranes. That includes like your mouth, your tongue, your throat. It can produce burning and swelling. It causes difficulty speaking or swallowing, hence the common name dumb cane for the Dieffenbachia, because it can quite literally make you dumb. You cannot speak. And also it can cause nauseousness and vomiting. And in really severe cases, it could also cause breathing difficulties. So like I mentioned at the very beginning, there are a lot of houseplants that have calcium oxalate, these tiny glass-like shards that will tear up your mouth and throat and your lips if you were to consume it. Same for animals. They will feel that same irritation. So let me just give you a list. We have our Dieffenbachia, of course, our dumb cane, but it also includes your anthuriums, your flamingo flowers, caladiums, your epiprimnums, which is the pothos plant or your devil's ivy, monsteras. They have calcium oxalate. All your Swiss cheese plants. Does anyone call them that? I always just call them monsteras. Also, your philodendrons, heartleaf philodendrons, notably have calcium oxalate. Your peace lilies, spathiphyllum. Also, your syngoniums, your arrowhead vines, as well as ZZ plants and your dracaenas. Like I said, there were so many. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There were 9 plants plus Dieffenbachia. That's 10. Like I said, it was like half my list. They all contain calcium oxalate and are very irritating to your mouth, lips, throat, wherever it happens to go. It's a no-go. It's not very fun. All right, let's go to our next houseplant. Also, before I keep going, I just want to mention, if you, and I'm not sure if this will pick up, perhaps I'll just delete this part of the audio, but if while I'm talking you hear a big, low boom, there are currently fireworks going off like crazy. Tomorrow is a big holiday for Utah. In particular, it's something called Pioneer Day. We celebrate our pioneer ancestors that came out and settled here in Utah. It is seriously like a second 4th of July. And as with any holiday with a lot of fireworks, the fireworks are going on the day before the holiday. So it is not currently Pioneer Day, but apparently someone in the neighborhood is acting like it is, and there are massive fireworks going off. So I just wanted to mention, if you hear big low booms, that's what's going on. I'm literally like in the middle of my house, not near an exterior wall. I'm in my closet. Very fancy recording studio. It is literally a tiny, tiny coat closet. But I'm just not certain if my microphone will pick it up. All right, enough about that. So our next plant is Clivia. I'm not sure how common of like a houseplant this is. It's very pretty. Some people call it like a bush lily, but it's got these long green leaves. And at the center coming up is usually like a big orange yellowish flower. And it's all stemming from what looks like to be like one bulb-like center. Very similar to a lily. But we're going to talk about Clivia because it contains lycorine. And if you happen to ingest a Clivia plant, it produces nausea, vomiting, which is the most common symptom. Also, it can cause diarrhea, cramping, and tremors. So, lycorine, let's talk about it. It is a plant alkaloid, and basically what a plant alkaloid is, it is a nitrogen-containing compound that has really strong physiological effects. So some common plant alkaloids that you are most certainly familiar with include things like caffeine, that causes alertness in our bodies. We love it in coffee, in our sodas. Also nicotine, that's a plant alkaloid, as well as morphine. And there are many others. Those are probably the 3 most common, though, that you have heard of. So lycorine, being another plant alkaloid, it is primarily found in the Amaryllidaceae family, so that includes things like your daffodils or your amaryllis. And lycorine is especially potent in the bulb, and what it will do, it causes gastrointestinal and neurological symptoms. Hence the reason why it is causing, the diarrhea, the cramping, the vomiting. The neurological side is probably what's causing your nauseousness. Lycorine also has some antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial properties. So actually, this is kind of cool. Because of those properties, it is being studied to be used in medicine, specifically for Zika viruses and coronaviruses, as well as studies for its anti-cancer properties. So yes, it does cause irritation to you if you eat it, but perhaps in the right setting and at the right dosage, it could be a very helpful plant alkaloid for us. Just like caffeine is sometimes a really helpful plant alkaloid. And I feel like that brings up a really good point because it is the dosage of what, tips the boat of something being toxic versus medicinal. For example, water. Very basic. We need water to survive. But if you drink insane amounts of water, you could die. You would basically drown from drinking that much water. So it is all about the dosage and how much is being ingested. All right, let's move on to our next plant, Euphorbia pulcherrima, or you know it as the poinsettia. So poinsettias, if you have ever broken one, maybe you've knocked it off a table at a Christmas function, you will notice that it has a very milky latex sap, and it contains terpenes and diterpenes. So if you happen to ingest the latex sap, which you would if you ate a leaf, ate a stem, ate a flower, it will cause nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, and just general irritation. It can cause also irritation on your skin if it comes in contact with your skin. So let's talk about why. So terpenes, it is a very large class of organic compounds, mostly made of carbon and hydrogen. And terpenes, they are found in your essential oils. You can find terpenes in lavender, pine, citrus, etc., all those very potent essential oils. And diterpenes, they are a little subclass of terpenes, and they are often more chemically complex and more chemically potent. And like I mentioned, these terpenes, diterpenes, they are found present in the sap or the latex of many euphorbia species, not just the poinsettia. There are other plants that have that milky sap that is irritating as well. And the reason why these plants have it is because it's a defense against herbivores, like we talked about in the beginning. It has antimicrobial properties against fungi and insects in their native habitat. And that latex sap also helps with wound sealing. So if something is to snap off, that sap is able to kind of seal it up very nicely. And just as a note, poinsettias are often mistakenly seen as being like this extremely toxic plant. Don't eat a poinsettia, it will kill you. But they can cause irritation, right? To your skin, to your mouth if you were to eat it, but they will not kill you unless you ate like an extremely large amount. It's all about the dosage like we talked about. And for poinsettias, you would need a whole lot to kill you. I've done a care guide episode on poinsettias during Christmas time, and I remember reading that there are some popular myths that have gone around with poinsettias that, a child ate one leaf and died, but that is simply not true. They are not that toxic, although we will talk about a houseplant that is that toxic. I'm kind of wondering why do we even have it? Why do we use it in our yards? Why do we bring it inside? I don't know. We'll get to that. For now, we are moving on to our next plant, which is Hedera helix, or your English ivy. So these plants, the leaves and the berries, they contain a chemical called heterin, and it is classified as being a saponin. So if you were to eat it, it would produce a burning sensation in your throat. It would cause gastroenteritis and affect your nervous systems. So more specifically, it will cause drooling, vomiting, abdominal pain, rash, or skin irritation. And if you ate a large amount of English ivy, it would cause you to have difficulty breathing. English ivy is definitely not one that you would like to eat. So let's get a little more technical here. So heterin, found in Hedera helix, I mentioned is a saponin. And basically what a saponin is, they are these bitter soap-like compounds in plants. I say soap-like because heterin will actually foam like a soap if you were to mix it with water. And heterin, you will mostly find it in the berries and in the leaves. The reason why it's there is to deter herbivores like your rodents, deer, and other insects because it is very bitter. It causes your digestive system to become upset. And also the antimicrobial properties that it has helps prevent infections when the plant is wounded. So what I found to be really interesting about this plant, and kind of continuing on this whole conversation of proper dosage, is that when it is used in proper dosage, you can actually take extracts from English ivy that contain heterin and use it as a natural cough remedy. It really helps loosen the mucus, it helps relax your bronchial muscles, and it makes it easier to breathe. So you can actually find it in herbal syrups for bronchitis, for chest congestion. For example, one of these is a medicine called Prospan. Honestly, I've seen it in kids' medicine too. I can't remember the name right off the top of my head, but when I am out looking for more natural syrups for my littles who can't take really strong medicines, I often come across natural remedies that have extracts from English ivy. And of course, it's only safe when it is properly processed, when it is properly dosed and purified. You shouldn't be going out and ripping off some English ivy off your neighbor's tree and just munching on it. You really should know what you're doing. All right, let's move on to the next plant. This is the one that is so toxic. I'm just wondering why we keep it around. And this might be one that you're like, I've never heard of it as a houseplant, but it came up consistently when I was looking into what houseplants are the most dangerous. So some people must be keeping this as a houseplant, and that is oleander. So all parts of this plant, every single piece, contain cardiac glycosides. Just one leaf of oleander can be fatal. It will disrupt your heart function. It can cause irregular heartbeats. It can cause nauseousness, vomiting, drowsiness, seizures, and trigger circulatory failure and lead to death. You can see why I'm wondering why we keep it around. So let's dive into this. Cardiac glycosides, they are a plant-derived compound. They obviously affect how the heart is beating, right? And more specifically, they are strengthening the force of heart contractions. They are slowing down your heart rate. And cardiac glycosides can be medicinal. They can be, but in very small doses. More specifically, digoxin is a cardiac glycoside that is used for this form of medicine. However, it is not derived from oleander. They do not use oleander for this medicine. They will actually go to another plant, the foxglove plant, a very common flower used in floral design, and they will get digoxin from the foxglove plant instead for medicine to help with heart issues. They will not go to oleander simply because it is just too potent. And what is happening is these cardiac glycosides, they are blocking the sodium-potassium pump in your body. The sodium-potassium pump is what helps our muscles contract and relax. And if you mess with that, you are messing with the contractions and relaxing of your heart muscles. Very, very dangerous stuff. So the primary toxic compounds in oleander include oleandrin, nerine, and digitoxygenin. And like I mentioned, they are found in all parts of the plant, the leaves, the stems, the flowers, and even the smoke of the oleander if it is burned. That was something that was new to me. I had no idea about that. So if you consume just 1 or 2 leaves, it can be lethal to basically everything that could potentially consume it. Dogs, cats, humans, children, insects. It can be toxic to any of those. All right, let's see. Where were we? I say that because I actually just had to step away from recording. One of my boys just got a bloody nose late at night. That is the reality of being a mom and trying to have a podcast. Normally my husband would help out and take care of that, but he is out playing tennis with some friends. So let me get my brain in gear. Let's move to our next plant, which is oxalis, or it is commonly called the false shamrock. So all parts of this plant contain oxalic acids. And what oxalic acids will do to you, if you ingest it, it will cause nausea and will cause kidney inflammation. And there are actually some other plants that contain oxalic acid. That includes your scheffleras or your umbrella trees. Also Dieffenbachias, it's coming back. That Dieffenbachia we talked about at the beginning, it also has oxalic acid in it. And also some of your philodendrons have oxalic acid as well. Oxalic acids are naturally occurring organic acids found in many plants, and you can actually find it in spinach, in rhubarb, beets, Swiss chard, almonds, and then of course some houseplants like the ones we mentioned. And so there's a difference between the two, because as I was researching, I'm like, oh, well, how come when I eat spinach, it is not causing nausea? Although for some people, maybe spinach would cause that. But for the most part, there's no obvious toxicity to spinach, to your beets, to your rhubarb. So this is the difference between the two. The kind of oxalic acid in houseplants is an insoluble form. It has calcium oxalate rhaphides, those needles, the glass shard needles, and those crystals inject in your tissue. They cause irritation, cause that burning, choking, and swelling. Whereas oxalic acid in spinach and in rhubarb and almonds, Swiss chard, it does not cause damage because it has a soluble form. It doesn't harm you. There's no way for it to inject into your skin and cause harm. The only way it can perhaps cause harm is by increasing your risk of kidney stones if you were already susceptible to them and ate really high quantities of those foods that I mentioned. And there are others that contain oxalic acid as well. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that they contain the same compound, just in different forms. One is okay, one is quite painful for you. And the painful one is found in our houseplants. Moving on to our next houseplant, it's the Solanum capsicum, which is commonly called the Jerusalem cherry. Now, this plant didn't ring a bell when I looked at it. Again, I think it's one of those houseplants that not a whole lot of people have. But I wanted to include it. It's quite interesting. So let's talk about it. The Jerusalem cherry produces a fruit, and that fruit contains solanine, which is a highly toxic glycoalkaloid. So if you were to eat it, it would cause a burning sensation in your mouth, in your throat, followed by gastric irritation, fever, and diarrhea. So solanine is not specific to just the Jerusalem cherry. It's actually found in a lot of the members of the nightshade family. Nightshade family is most commonly known for including tomatoes, potatoes, your eggplants, and when you think of those are all edible plants. But they all also contain solanine, which if you were to eat the Jerusalem cherry would cause cell damage to you. There are actually cases of solanine poisoning, and this is the symptoms that it would cause. So for your digestive system, it would cause, like we mentioned, the nausea, vomiting, stomach cramps, and diarrhea. For your nervous system, it would cause drowsiness, confusion, tremors, and even hallucinations. For your circulatory system, it could cause a slowed heart rate and low blood pressure, and in very severe cases, it can even cause paralysis, put you in a coma, and death, although that is very, very rare. And again, as I read those, you're probably like, whoa, tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants can cause that? Not so much, because solanine levels vary. It is very high in your Jerusalem cherry. Definitely don't eat those. And it is very low in your tomatoes and potatoes and eggplants. It can be a problem if you are eating green tomatoes that are uncooked, they are just raw. Those have higher levels of solanine, and it could cause some irritation to your body. Green potatoes or potatoes that have sprouted also will have higher levels of solanine. Eggplants was pretty low. Don't worry about your eggplants. But also, if you are using these plants when they are ripe, if you are cooking them, that all lowers the level of solanine. Therefore, you will not see those effects that I talked about by just eating your tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants if you're preparing them in a normal way. But if you were to try and go munch on a Jerusalem cherry, you will in fact feel these adverse effects that I have mentioned. All right, we are already to the last houseplant I wanted to talk about. I'm sure there are others that I have not mentioned in this podcast episode, and we could just keep going and going, but I am going to end it here. And this last houseplant is Cycas revoluta, or your sago palm. So sago palms, they contain cycacin. It is highly toxic, especially to the liver. It will cause vomiting and diarrhea, liver failure, and seizures. So this is one that can obviously be fatal to humans, but it is particularly fatal to pets, especially dogs. So what's going on in the body, if it is ingested, cycacin is broken down by your digestive enzymes. Just like it does with any food that you put into your mouth or into your body, it is being broken down by enzymes. So cycacin is no different. It enters your body, and as it is getting broken down, it breaks down into, let's see if I can say this word, it is methylazoxymethanol, or MAM for short, and that is the actual toxin, which will damage your liver cells, your nerves, and your DNA. So here's some of the symptoms in more depth. I mentioned the vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain, that cramping. It can also cause liver failure or hepatitis. And obviously, this is the most dangerous effect that can occur. And sometimes it occurs even 2 to 3 days after consumption. It can affect your nervous system, and you will feel that by having weakness, having seizures, ataxia, which is a loss of coordination. And it can also cause comas or even death. And where it is most potent is in its seed, so just 1 or 2 seeds can cause fatal liver failure in dogs. In fact, when I was looking at it, the mortality rate for dogs that ingest sago palm seeds is around 30 to 50%, even with vet care. 30 to 50% of them will not make it. So this is definitely one. If I had a furry friend, if I had a dog, I don't know if I would have a sago palm in the house. If I did, it would have to be very high up and out of the way, somewhere that it could not be knocked over, because I would not want that happening to my pets. Unfortunately, my husband is allergic and is not like a big pet guy, so we've just decided not to have them. Anyways, that's besides the point. I hope that this episode was enjoyable, and maybe enjoyable is not the word because we were talking about some more morbid stuff, but perhaps it was informative. Perhaps you learned something new. But I just want to say I'm so glad you're here listening. It means a whole lot to me to have you part of this community on the Plant School podcast. And I just want to say I hope you have a great day, and I hope that you will be here in 2 weeks for a brand new episode of the Plant School podcast. Thank you so much for being here and for listening to the Plant School podcast. I hope that you will join me for our next episode. And if you would like to support this podcast and keep it going, there's a link down in the show notes of this episode where you can donate to this podcast. And I really appreciate all that help. Or you can go to my merch store, which is also linked in the notes of this episode. And you can find some really cool plant-related shirts and stickers. And if you want to support the podcast but spend no money, feel free to share it with a friend, leave a review. All these things greatly help me out and allow me to keep doing this. Again, thank you so much for listening and for being here at the Plant School podcast.